Help me! Somebody help me! That was my HOA president screaming as she sprinted down Maplewood Drive at 7 a.m. with a swarm of Hornets locked onto her like guided missiles. Grown woman, designer heels, arms flailing, stung over and over as neighbors rushed outside in disbelief. Every sting was earned. 3 months earlier, Brenda Kowalski turned my front porch into her personal shopping mall. Over $3,000 in packages vanished into her white Escalade while she waved at my security camera like we were old friends. What she didn't know was that I'm an aerospace engineer. And the package she chose that morning wasn't ordinary. It was monitored, controlled, and designed to expose her in the most public way possible. The Hornets were only the beginning. By the time the police arrived, Brenda's HOA career and her freedom were both on a timer. What would you do if your HOA president was stealing your deliveries? Let me back up and tell you how this whole mess started. My name's Marcus River, and 6 months ago I thought moving to Willowbrook Estates in suburban Phoenix was the smartest decision I'd made since my divorce. Clean slate, quiet neighborhood, the kind of place where your biggest worry should be remembering to water your cactus garden. I'm an aerospace engineer, the kind of guy who designs guidance systems for things that need to hit their target with pinpoint accuracy. After 20 years of marriage fell apart, I figured a peaceful retirement community was exactly what I needed. Work remotely, order my specialized equipment online, and finally have some peace. The smell of chlorine from the community pool mixed with desert sage hit me every morning as I walked to my mailbox. It was perfect. Or so I thought. Then I met Brenda Kowalski. Picture a woman who treats HOA bylaws like they're the 10 Commandments and she's Moses. 52 years old, bleached blonde hair sprayed into a helmet that could survive a Category 5 hurricane. She drove a white Cadillac Escalade with a blessed license plate frame, which should have been my first red flag. Here's what I learned about Brenda later. She wasn't just a control freak, she was a power addict. Started with nitpicking violations, escalated to selective rule enforcement, and package theft was her ultimate power move. But here's what made Brenda truly dangerous. The package theft wasn't about money. It was about testing boundaries. Each successful theft proved she was untouchable. The woman who could steal thousands through fake invoices wanted to prove she could steal anything, right off your porch while you watched. It was the ultimate power display. Her husband Dave traveled for pharmaceutical sales 20-plus days a month. Their daughter was away at college. Empty nest syndrome plus unlimited authority equals a woman testing boundaries constantly, escalating when nobody pushes back. Brenda had been HOA president for 4 straight years. Know why? Because nobody else wanted the job. Most folks figured it was easier to let her handle the paperwork and stay out of her way. Big mistake. Our first interaction came 3 days after I moved in. I'm unpacking boxes when I hear the sharp click of heels on my front walkway. There's Brenda, clipboard in hand, fake smile plastered across her face like she's running for office. "Welcome to the neighborhood, Mr. River," she said, but her eyes were scanning my xeriscaped front yard like she was looking for code violations. "I'm Brenda Kowalski, HOA president. I see you've got some interesting landscaping choices here." Interesting. That's HOA speak for "I hate it but can't legally make you change it yet." "The previous owner designed it," I told her. "Drought-resistant plants, saves water." Her smile got tighter. "Well, we'll see how it looks as it grows in. The community has certain standards to maintain, you understand." The texture of that cheap HOA newsletter she handed me was slightly damp from her sweaty palms. Even then, I could sense the control freak energy radiating off her like heat from asphalt. That night, I did what any good engineer does. I read the fine print. All 67 pages of CC&Rs, community covenants, and restrictions. My xeriscaping was completely compliant. In fact, the architectural committee had approved identical landscaping for 3 other homes just 6 months earlier. But Brenda didn't care about rules. She cared about power. The package thefts started small. A $47 replacement part for my 3D printer. I figured it was porch pirates. Happens everywhere these days, right? Then my $180 precision calipers disappeared. Then $220 worth of circuit boards for a consulting project. That's when I installed the Ring doorbell camera. Basic stuff, nothing fancy. Just wanted to see who was hitting my porch. The footage told an interesting story. Packages disappeared only on weekday mornings between 9 and 11 a.m. Only when Brenda's Escalade was parked in her driveway. Only when her husband Dave was out of town on his pharmaceutical sales trips. But here's the thing that really got my attention. She wasn't just grabbing packages and running. This woman was examining the shipping labels first, weighing them in her hands like she was shopping at the grocery store, picking and choosing what looked valuable enough to steal. The day I caught her red-handed changed everything. I'm working in my home office when I see her white Escalade pull up to my mailbox. Brenda gets out, walks straight to my porch, picks up a package containing $350's worth of microprocessors for a defense contract, and starts walking back to her car. I threw open my front door. "Excuse me, Brenda, that's my package." She froze like a deer in headlights, clutching my property against her chest. For about 3 seconds. Then that fake smile came back. "Oh, Marcus, I was just checking this for you. Sometimes packages get misdelivered, and as HOA president, I like to make sure everyone gets their items safely." The woman was standing next to my mailbox, which clearly displayed my house number, holding a package addressed to Marcus River at my exact address. But she doubled down on the lie. "I'll just take this to the office for safekeeping until you get home." That's when I realized this wasn't about packages. This was about power, control, and a woman who'd gotten so comfortable stealing from her neighbors that she thought she could lie her way out of anything. I held out my hand. "I'm home now. I'll take it." She handed it over, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. How dare this new resident question her authority? How dare he not play along with her obvious lies? 2 days later, I got my first violation notice. Non-conforming xeriscaping inconsistent with community aesthetic standards. $50 a day until corrected. Now the war was officially on. Brenda's first big mistake was thinking she could bully an engineer who had way too much time on his hands and serious trust issues from a messy divorce. Her violation notice cited CCNR Section 4.7 about landscaping promoting community aesthetic standards. So I did what any logical person would do. I read Section 4.7, then I read it again, then I cross-referenced it with the Architectural Committee minutes from the past 2 years. Know what I found? The exact same xeriscaping design had been approved for 3 other homes in 2023. Sarah Martinez on Cottonwood Lane, the Johnsons on Desert View Drive. Even Brenda's next-door neighbor had identical drought-resistant landscaping that she'd never said a word about. I spent the next week documenting everything. Printed photos of every similar yard in the neighborhood, pulled property records showing when landscaping was installed, found the original Architectural Committee approvals, even discovered that Arizona state law encourages xeriscaping for water conservation. The smell of toner and fresh paper filled my home office as I printed enough evidence to choke a horse. My coffee maker worked overtime during those 5 a.m. research sessions, the bitter aroma mixing with my growing determination to beat this woman at her own game. Then I learned something interesting about Arizona HOA law. Statute 33-1903 requires that violations be reasonable and enforced uniformly. Selective enforcement can void all fines and expose board members to personal liability for harassment. Here's the takeaway. If your HOA only enforces rules against people they don't like, they've just handed you a legal sledgehammer to demolish their entire case. Armed with this knowledge, I requested a hearing with the Architectural Committee, showed up with my stack of documentation, and laid it all out. Same plants, same design, same committee that had approved identical landscaping multiple times before. The committee chair, a nervous guy named Steve who clearly wanted to be anywhere else, looked through my evidence for about 30 seconds before clearing his throat. "Well, it appears there might have been some inconsistency in how this was handled. We'll need to withdraw the violation." Brenda's face went through more color changes than a mood ring, but she couldn't argue with her own committee's previous approvals. Victory, right? Wrong. 2 days later, I got a new violation notice. Non-conforming window treatments visible from street view. Apparently my standard white mini blinds, the same ones that came with the house and matched every other house in the neighborhood, were now a community aesthetic crisis. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules at all. This was personal. Brenda had decided I was a threat to her little kingdom, and she was going to use every petty regulation in the book to make my life miserable. But here's what she didn't know about engineers. We love solving problems. And Brenda Kowalski had just become my most interesting problem yet. I started attending HOA board meetings, brought printed copies of the actual CC&Rs and highlighted the relevant sections, asked uncomfortable questions about selective enforcement and legal liability, requested financial reports and meeting minutes that should have been public record anyway. The meetings were held in the community center, a beige box that smelled like industrial carpet and broken dreams. Usually it was just Brenda and 5 residents who'd been bullied into serving on the board. After I started showing up, attendance jumped to 15, then 20 people. Turns out I wasn't the only one with Brenda problems. Sarah Martinez whispered to me after one meeting that she'd had 3 packages disappear in the past month. The elderly Johnsons mentioned that their grandson's birthday gift never arrived, even though tracking showed it was delivered. But when I suggested we discuss package security at the next meeting, Brenda shut it down faster than a casino closing time. Individual delivery issues aren't appropriate for board discussion. Residents should contact their carriers directly. She was protecting her operation, and now I knew it was bigger than just my stuff. That weekend, I upgraded my security system. Not just the basic Ring doorbell, I installed a cellular backup camera with motion detection and cloud storage. No more convenient maintenance windows when footage mysteriously disappeared. And I started ordering decoy packages. Cheap stuff made to look expensive. If someone was shopping from my porch, I wanted to give them plenty of opportunities to make mistakes. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for Brenda's greed to outweigh her caution. 3 weeks later, my patience paid off in the most spectacular way possible. I'm working from my home office when I get a motion alert on my phone. The timestamp reads 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, prime theft time when most people are at work and kids are still in school. I pull up the live feed and there's Brenda, bold as brass, examining a package on my front porch. She weighs it in her hands, tilts it to her ear like she's trying to guess what's inside. Then she looks around to make sure nobody's watching and walks straight to her Escalade. No pretense about checking for the correct address this time. No fake concern about community safety. Just pure, undiluted theft caught in high-definition video with perfect lighting. The package contains $600 worth of microprocessors for a Department of Defense subcontract. In Arizona, theft over $500 is a felony. Brenda had just upgraded from petty larceny to serious prison time. I saved the footage to 3 different cloud services, emailed copies to myself, and then did what any reasonable person would do. I filed a police report. Detective Maria Santos was a 20-year veteran with the kind of no-nonsense attitude that comes from dealing with suburban crime for too long. She watched my video footage twice, shook her head, and started filling out paperwork. HOA president, huh? We see this more than you'd think. Power goes to their heads. But here's where things got interesting. Arizona law defines theft by finding under statute 13-1802. If you find someone else's property and don't make reasonable efforts to return it, that's a misdemeanor. But if you sell that property, felony theft, automatic upgrade. Here's your takeaway. Most package thieves don't realize that selling stolen goods online leaves a digital paper trail that prosecutors love to follow. Detective Santos ran Brenda's name through local pawnshop databases and online marketplace algorithms. What she found made my engineer brain absolutely sing with satisfaction. Brenda Kowalski had been running a Facebook marketplace account under the name Brenda's Bargains. Over $2,000 in electronic sales in the past 3 months. High-end items, always listed as new inbox or never used. Serial numbers that matched reports of missing packages from 3 different neighborhoods. The woman wasn't just a thief, she was running a small business. But here's where the justice system gets frustrating. The district attorney's office looked at the evidence and basically shrugged. One incident, first-time offender, valuable member of the community. They offered Brenda a deal. Return the stolen items, pay restitution, and promise to stop stealing packages. She turned it down. Claimed the video was doctored and hired a lawyer who sent me a cease and desist letter demanding I stop harassing his client with false accusations. That's when Brenda made her second big mistake. She escalated. Emergency HOA board meeting called with 48 hours notice. Agenda item, discussion of resident use of surveillance equipment for harassment purposes. Translation. Brenda wanted to ban security cameras so she could steal packages without being recorded. The meeting was packed. Word had gotten out about the package thefts and 30-plus residents showed up demanding answers. You could cut the tension with a knife, or in this case, with the sound of Brenda's heels clicking nervously on the community center's tile floor. Certain residents, she began, never looking directly at me, have been using surveillance equipment to spy on their neighbors and create a hostile environment. That's when Mrs. Johnson, all 83 years old and 5 feet nothing, stood up and interrupted her. "Are you talking about the cameras that caught you stealing packages, dear?" The room went dead silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Brenda's face flushed red, but she doubled down. Alleged theft, unproven allegations, and frankly, the real issue here is privacy invasion and the creation of a surveillance state that makes residents uncomfortable in their own neighborhood. I stood up, pulled out my phone, and connected it to the room's projector system. "Would you like to see the unproven allegations?" For the next 5 minutes, 30 residents watched crystal-clear footage of their HOA president systematically stealing packages from my porch. The gasps and muttered comments filled the room like a live sports broadcast. When the video ended, Brenda was shaking with rage. "This is entrapment. This is harassment. This man is dangerous and unstable, and I'm calling the police." That's when Detective Santos stepped out from the back of the room where she'd been quietly watching the whole show. "Ma'am, I am the police, and you're under arrest." The taste of justice in that moment was sweeter than my grandmother's apple pie. But as it turned out, package theft was just the appetizer. The main course was still coming. You'd think getting arrested for felony theft would humble someone. You'd think wrong. Brenda made bail within 6 hours and came back swinging like a cornered wildcat. If I thought she was vindictive before, I was about to learn what real vindictiveness looked like. First, she filed a complaint with the Arizona Corporation Commission claiming I was running an illegal business from my residential address. My crime? Doing freelance engineering consulting from my home office, which was completely legal and properly licensed. Then she contacted the IRS with an anonymous tip about unreported income from my consulting work, every penny of which was properly documented and taxed, but try explaining that while you're being audited. But her masterpiece was calling Adult Protective Services with concerns about dangerous chemicals and explosive materials being stored in a residential area near children and elderly residents. She was referring to my engineering supplies, standard electronics components, cleaning solvents, and 3D printer materials that you can buy on Amazon. The smell of bureaucratic panic filled my mailbox as official notices piled up like autumn leaves. Each investigation required hours of documentation, phone calls, and lawyer consultations. Even when you're completely innocent, defending yourself against false accusations is exhausting and expensive. That's when I realized Brenda wasn't just trying to discredit me, she was trying to bankrupt me. Death by 1,000 paper cuts, bureaucratic style. Her final nuclear option was a restraining order request claiming I'd been stalking and intimidating her with my dangerous surveillance equipment and obsessive behavior. The petition included dramatic language about feeling unsafe in her own neighborhood due to my escalating harassment campaign. I hired Jennifer Walsh, an attorney who specializes in HOA disputes and abusive litigation. Cost me $5,000 just for the retainer, but it was the smartest money I'd ever spent. "This is a classic slap suit," Jennifer explained during our first meeting. "Strategic lawsuit against public participation. She's using the legal system to silence you and drain your resources." Here's what I learned. Arizona has strong anti-slap laws that allow victims to recover attorney fees and damages when someone files frivolous lawsuits designed to suppress free speech or legitimate complaints. Your takeaway: document everything when someone tries to weaponize the court system against you, because frivolous lawsuits can backfire spectacularly on the people who file them. Jennifer filed a counterclaim for harassment and defamation, but more importantly, she started digging into HOA financial records as part of discovery. That's when we found the smoking gun that changed everything. Frank Rodriguez, a retired accountant who lived 3 houses down from me, had been quietly analyzing HOA financial statements for months. Turns out, engineers aren't the only people who love finding patterns in data. "Marcus," he said, spreading printouts across my kitchen table, "I think your package problem is just the tip of the iceberg." Frank had discovered $18,000 in unexplained expenses over the past 18 months. Payments to something called D&B Consulting for services like community wellness assessment, security evaluation, and landscape optimization consulting. Problem was, D&B Consulting didn't exist as a registered business entity in Arizona. The payments went to a business bank account registered to David and Brenda Kowalski. Brenda wasn't just stealing packages from porches. She'd been embezzling from the entire community for years. The paper trail was beautiful in its simplicity. Fake invoices for services that were never performed. Board meeting minutes that mentioned approving professional consultations, but never specified what those consultations involved. Financial reports that buried the payments in line items labeled miscellaneous maintenance and community improvement initiatives. We're talking about systematic fraud affecting 127 homeowners. Every family in Willowbrook Estates had been robbed, not just the ones missing packages. Frank's analysis showed that if you removed the fraudulent expenses, everyone's HOA dues could have been $30 per month lower for the past 2 years. Brenda had been stealing $540 annually from every household in the community. That's when I realized this wasn't about getting my packages back anymore. This was about protecting my neighbors from a predator who'd been systematically robbing them while hiding behind a clipboard and a fake smile. But confronting a package thief is one thing. Exposing systematic embezzlement that could send someone to federal prison, that's when things get dangerous. And Brenda was about to prove just how dangerous a cornered fraudster could be. Frank Rodriguez's forensic analysis hit my kitchen table like a financial earthquake, and suddenly everything made sense. $67,000. That's what Brenda had systematically stolen from our community over 3.5 years. Not just packages from porches, but money directly from every homeowner's pocket through fraudulent HOA expenses. The scheme was elegant in its simplicity. Create fake vendor companies using variations of her maiden name, B&D Services, Desert Consulting LLC, Kowalski Property Solutions. Submit invoices for work that sounded legitimate but was never actually performed. Have the invoices approved during sparsely attended board meetings where nobody asked too many questions. Look at this, Frank said, pointing to a spreadsheet that made my engineer brain light up with recognition. Emergency pool pump repair, $3,400, but the pool maintenance company has no record of any emergency repairs that month. Landscape assessment and redesign consultation, $2,800, but our landscaping contractor says they never heard of any assessment. Security system evaluation, $1,900. What security system? We don't even have one. The beautiful part, from a criminal's perspective, was that each individual expense seemed reasonable. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. Spread out over months, buried in quarterly financial reports that most residents never bothered to read. But here's where Brenda made her fatal mistake. Arizona HOA law requires the board president to personally certify the accuracy of all financial reports under penalty of perjury. CC&R Section 12.4 makes the president personally liable for any fraudulent expenses, with damages extending to personal assets, including their home. Your takeaway. When HOA board members sign financial certifications, they're putting their houses on the line, literally, if they're lying about where the money went. Brenda had signed 4 years' worth of certifications claiming all expenses were legitimate, necessary, and properly authorized for community benefit. Every signature was potential perjury. Every fake invoice was mail fraud. Every fraudulent payment was money laundering. We weren't just dealing with a package thief anymore. We were looking at federal crimes with serious prison time. Frank's analysis also explained something that had been bothering me. Why was Brenda so desperate to discredit me and shut down any investigation? Because she knew that anyone who looked closely at HOA finances would discover her embezzlement scheme. The package theft wasn't separate from the financial fraud. It was part of the same pattern of entitlement and theft that had been going on for years. She'd gotten so comfortable stealing from the community that grabbing packages probably felt like a harmless side business. But now she was trapped. If she resigned as HOA president to avoid scrutiny, someone else would inevitably discover the missing money during the transition. If she stayed and tried to cover it up, the investigation would eventually expose everything anyway. The smell of desperation was starting to replace her usual vanilla perfume whenever I saw her around the neighborhood. She'd stopped her daily power walks. Her husband Dave's business trips became longer and more frequent. The blessed license plate frame disappeared from her Escalade. That's when she made her final, desperate gambit, an offer I never saw coming. She approached me in the grocery store parking lot on a Wednesday evening, looking around nervously like she was meeting a drug dealer. "Marcus," she said, her voice shaking slightly, "I think we've both let this situation get out of hand. What if we could find a way to resolve things quietly?" I waited for her to continue. "I could make sure your packages never go missing again. I could drop all the violations and complaints. Maybe even cover your legal expenses from this whole misunderstanding." She paused, then played her trump card. $5,000, cash. We call everything even and move forward as good neighbors. $5,000 to walk away and let her continue stealing from 126 other families. That's when I realized this wasn't about money or packages anymore. This was about whether Brenda Kowalski would face consequences for years of theft and fraud, or whether she'd buy her way out of accountability and continue victimizing our community. I looked her in the eye and said the words that sealed her fate. I'll see you at the community meeting next week. When I refused her settlement, I saw something change in her eyes. Not anger, panic. She realized negotiation had failed, and her only options left were destruction of evidence or flight. That's when a cornered criminal becomes most dangerous. Over the next 48 hours, Brenda would escalate to levels I never imagined possible. Property damage, character assassination, and witness intimidation, all desperate attempts to avoid the accountability that was closing in around her like a net. The war was about to go nuclear. My kitchen table looked like a war room by Thursday morning. Financial spreadsheets covered every inch of surface space, highlighted in colors that would make a rainbow jealous. Legal documents stacked 3 inches high. Engineering schematics for what would become the most satisfying package trap in suburban history. But the centerpiece was my laptop screen, displaying the design specs for Operation Hornet Justice. See, when you're an aerospace engineer who specializes in guidance systems, you don't just get mad, you get methodical. And methodical was exactly what this situation required. Jennifer Walsh, my attorney, had mapped out our legal strategy like a military campaign. Criminal referral to the state attorney general for the embezzlement charges, civil lawsuit for restitution and damages, and the coup de grace, irrefutable evidence of package theft that would make any jury convict her in about 30 seconds. The financial fraud is solid, Jennifer said during our strategy session. But package theft caught on camera? That's what will make this case absolutely bulletproof. Frank Rodriguez had been working overtime on the forensic accounting. His final analysis showed $67,000 in fraudulent transactions over 42 months, fake invoices, phantom vendors, and imaginary services that existed only in Brenda's imagination and our bank statements. But I needed something more dramatic than spreadsheets to wake up the community, something that would force everyone to pay attention and take action. That's where my engineering background came in handy. The package would look completely ordinary from the outside. Amazon packaging, realistic shipping labels, convincing weight and dimensions. Inside, a custom-designed evidence collection system that would make CSI jealous. The GPS tracker was military-grade with triple redundancy and cellular connectivity, real-time location monitoring that couldn't be disabled by removing batteries, multiple miniature cameras with 360-degree coverage and automatic cloud uploading, audio recording equipment sensitive enough to pick up whispered conversations. Even if Brenda destroyed the package, the evidence was already uploaded to secure servers in 3 states. And the pièce de resistance, a remote-controlled release mechanism connected to a chamber containing trained hornets from a professional pest control supplier. The hornets were the key, non-lethal but angry enough to create a spectacle that would be impossible to ignore or explain away. Professional pest control specialists assured me the hornets were trained for non-lethal crowd dispersal, designed to discourage, not injure. Medical team was on standby, and all safety protocols followed to ensure this remained evidence gathering, not assault. The goal was public accountability, not physical harm. When Brenda moved the package more than 50 feet from my property, the GPS would trigger an automatic release. Hornets don't kill people, but they sure make them run fast and scream loud. Loud enough for the whole neighborhood to witness Brenda's final moment of accountability. Sarah Martinez became my communication coordinator, managing the neighborhood WhatsApp group with the discretion of a CIA operative. Frank continued his financial investigation, uncovering new evidence of fraud almost daily. The elderly Johnsons served as our institutional memory, providing details about suspicious HOA decisions from previous years. We scheduled the trap for a Tuesday morning, Brenda's prime theft window when Dave was traveling and most residents were at work. I'd place the package at 7 a.m., then coordinate with neighbors to ensure maximum witness coverage. The smell of anticipation mixed with fresh coffee as I fine-tuned the Hornet release mechanism. Servo motors calibrated to aerospace precision standards. Timer circuits designed to trigger exactly 60 seconds after GPS movement detection. Everything tested and retested until it worked flawlessly. But this wasn't just about revenge. We were building something bigger, a model for community accountability that could protect future residents from HOA corruption. Laura Kim, an investigative reporter for Channel 12 News, had been following our story as part of a broader series on HOA fraud across Arizona. She'd be positioned nearby Tuesday morning, ready to capture whatever happened on live television. This could be the perfect example of grassroots justice, Laura explained during our background interview. Communities taking back power from corrupt officials and demanding transparency. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Brenda steals the package. GPS triggers Hornet release. Chaos ensues. Everything gets recorded from multiple angles. Police arrive to document a woman covered in Hornet stings while holding stolen property. Game over. Monday night, I did final equipment checks while neighbors took their positions. Sarah at her front window with a smartphone camera. Frank recording from his driveway with professional video equipment. The Johnsons positioned for the perfect angle to capture Brenda's reaction. Even the Hornets seemed ready for their starring role. Professional pest control specialists had assured me they were trained for non-lethal crowd dispersal, angry enough to chase someone, docile enough to avoid serious injury. As I placed the package on my front porch at exactly 7:03 a.m. Tuesday morning, I felt the same calm focus I experienced when launching missile guidance systems. Every component tested, every variable accounted for, every possible outcome planned for. The package sat there looking perfectly innocent. Amazon Prime label, convincing weight, expensive electronics marking that would trigger Brenda's greed. Inside, cutting-edge surveillance technology waited to document her final theft. All I had to do now was wait for Brenda's predictable pattern to play out one last time. The taste of justice was already sweet on my tongue, and the Hornets hadn't even been released yet. While I was engineering the perfect trap, Brenda was escalating her harassment campaign to levels that would make a military dictator proud. It started with property damage. I discovered my drip irrigation lines had been cut with garden shears sometime during the night, destroying $800 worth of drought-resistant plants that had taken months to establish. The smell of dying desert sage mixed with my growing anger as I surveyed the deliberate sabotage. Then my car wouldn't start. The mechanic found sugar in my gas tank, enough to potentially destroy the engine if I hadn't caught it early. Someone had also superglued my mailbox lock shut, forcing me to drill it out and install a replacement. But Brenda's most creative attack was digital warfare. Fake social media accounts started popping up, targeting me and anyone who supported the financial investigation. Marcus River exposed posts claimed I was running illegal businesses, storing dangerous chemicals, and harassing elderly residents. The doctored photos were particularly impressive. Someone had photoshopped images to make it look like I had industrial equipment and chemical storage tanks in my backyard. Fake Yelp reviews claimed Willowbrook Estates was unsafe due to unstable resident with access to explosive materials. Her college-age son and his fraternity brothers started making late-night drive-bys past my house, engines revving and music blasting at 2 a.m. When I called the police, they'd be gone by the time officers arrived. Legal harassment designed to exhaust and intimidate. But her masterpiece was the attempted bribery of Frank Rodriguez. Frank called me Thursday evening, voice shaking with excitement and indignation. "Marcus, you're not going to believe what just happened." Brenda had approached him at the grocery store, acting casual while doing her shopping. Then she steered the conversation toward his financial analysis of HOA records. "You know, Frank, accounting can be so complicated," she'd said, loading organic produce into her cart like they were discussing the weather. Sometimes honest mistakes get interpreted as something more sinister. Then came the offer. $15,000 in cash if Frank would reconsider his analysis and issue a corrected report showing that all HOA expenses were legitimate. She actually said I could avoid professional embarrassment by admitting I'd made calculation errors, Frank told me. "The woman tried to bribe me with grocery money while we were standing next to the bananas." Frank had done something brilliant. He'd recorded the entire conversation on his phone. Brenda's voice, clear as crystal, offering money to falsify financial records and obstruct a fraud investigation. Your takeaway: when someone tries to bribe you to cover up their crimes, always hit the record button. It's usually the evidence that sends them to prison. The bribery attempt was a federal crime that elevated everything to a whole new level. Not just theft and embezzlement anymore, but witness tampering and obstruction of justice. Brenda was digging her own grave with increasingly desperate attempts to avoid accountability. Detective Santos was practically giddy when Frank played her the recording. "Ma'am, this woman is giving us enough evidence to put her away for years. She's either incredibly stupid or incredibly panicked." "Why not both?" I suggested. Meanwhile, I was putting finishing touches on the package trap. The Hornet chamber had been tested and calibrated. GPS tracking was connected to cellular networks with automatic police notification. Cameras were positioned for optimal coverage angles. The irony was delicious. While Brenda was destroying her own legal position with witness tampering and bribery, I was preparing to document her final crime in high-definition detail. Sarah Martinez reported that neighborhood sentiment had shifted completely. Even residents who'd initially supported Brenda were questioning her increasingly erratic behavior. The WhatsApp group buzzed with speculation about the upcoming community meeting and demands for financial transparency. "People are scared," Sarah told me during one of our coordination calls. "They're realizing that if she could steal packages and embezzle HOA funds, what else has she been lying about?" That fear was justified. Frank's investigation had uncovered additional irregularities dating back to Brenda's first year as president: missing vendor receipts, unauthorized expense approvals, and financial reports with unexplained discrepancies. But fear was exactly what we needed: angry, mobilized residents demanding accountability and transparency. A community ready to take back control from a corrupt official who'd betrayed their trust for years. Monday evening, I placed the final components of the trap package, everything sealed and ready for deployment. The Hornets were secured in their temperature-controlled chamber, waiting for their moment to deliver justice with wings and stingers. As I looked across the street at Brenda's house, I could see her silhouette pacing back and forth behind her living room curtains. The woman who'd terrorized our neighborhood for years was about to face consequences that would make her running sprint down Maplewood Drive look like a leisurely jog. The trap was set, the community was watching, and Brenda's greed was about to destroy her life in the most public way possible. Monday night felt like Christmas Eve, if Christmas involved elaborate revenge plots and trained hornets. Brenda's desperation had reached new heights over the weekend. She'd filed an emergency restraining order claiming I was a dangerous stalker with access to explosive materials, who posed an imminent threat to community safety. The petition included dramatic testimony about feeling terrorized in her own neighborhood by my escalating harassment campaign. The woman actually claimed I'd been conducting surveillance with military-grade equipment and making threatening gestures during neighborhood encounters. Pure fiction, but effective enough to get a temporary order while we waited for a hearing. Her lawyer, Dave's golf buddy who specialized in personal injury cases, had clearly been coaching her on victim language. The restraining order petition read like a Hollywood thriller. Petitioner fears for her physical safety and believes respondents' behavior is escalating toward potential violence. But her fatal mistake was vandalism masquerading as evidence creation. Sunday evening, someone threw rocks through her own front windows and spray-painted "thief" on her garage door. Brenda called police claiming I'd escalated to property destruction and left threatening messages on her home. Problem was, Sarah Martinez had been testing her new security camera system that weekend. Her footage clearly showed Brenda throwing the rocks herself at 11:47 p.m., then spray-painting her own garage while looking around nervously to make sure no neighbors were watching. The woman had literally vandalized her own property to frame me for domestic terrorism. Detective Santos watched Sarah's footage with the weary expression of someone who'd seen every type of suburban crime imaginable. "Ma'am, filing false police reports is a felony. This woman is determined to add charges faster than we can process them." But the fake vandalism served Brenda's real purpose. It gave her justification to stay home from work Tuesday morning to deal with police reports and security concerns, which meant she'd be available during prime package theft hours for the first time in weeks. My trap couldn't have asked for better timing. At 7:03 a.m. Tuesday, I placed the package on my front porch with the reverent care of someone handling plutonium. Amazon Prime packaging, realistic shipping weight, expensive electronics marking that would trigger every criminal instinct in Brenda's brain. The GPS tracker activated immediately, sending location pings to the secure server that would document every second of what happened next. Cameras began recording in 4K resolution with audio enhancement that could pick up whispered conversations from 50 yards away. The Hornet chamber sat sealed and temperature-controlled, waiting for its 60-second delayed activation sequence. Professional pest control specialists had assured me the insects were trained for crowd dispersal with minimal injury risk. Angry enough to chase someone, controlled enough to avoid sending anyone to the emergency room. Frank Rodriguez positioned himself at his front window with professional video equipment. Sarah Martinez armed herself with multiple smartphones for different camera angles. The Johnsons took up residence on their front porch with a clear sightline to my house and Brenda's escape route. Even Laura Kim from Channel 12 News was discreetly parked around the corner, ready to capture everything for her investigative series on HOA corruption. 7:15 a.m. Brenda's garage door opened. White Escalade backed out slowly, like she was considering her options. 7:23 a.m. The Escalade pulled forward and parked directly across from my house. Brenda sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, examining my front porch through designer sunglasses. 7:31 a.m. She got out of her car and began her infamous power walk past my house, slowing down to examine the package without appearing too obvious. 7:34 a.m. Second pass, this time stopping to tie her shoe while getting a closer look at the shipping label. 7:38 a.m. Third pass, full stop. She looked around the neighborhood, saw no immediate witnesses, and made her decision. Brenda Kowalski walked directly to my front porch, picked up my package, and carried it to her Escalade like she owned it. No pretense about community safety checks this time. No fake concern about suspicious deliveries. Just pure, undisguised theft caught in perfect high-definition detail. The GPS registered movement at exactly 7:39:17 a.m. 60-second countdown initiated. As Brenda placed my stolen package in her passenger seat and closed the car door, I felt the same calm satisfaction I experienced when missile guidance systems achieved target lock. She had no idea that in 53 seconds her quiet Tuesday morning was about to become the most public humiliation of her entire life. The Hornets were locked and loaded. Justice was about to take flight. At exactly 7:40:17 a.m., Brenda Kowalski discovered what happens when you steal from an aerospace engineer who spent 3 months planning your downfall. The Hornet release mechanism triggered with the precision of Swiss clockwork. A soft mechanical whir from inside the package, followed by an angry buzzing sound that filled Brenda's Escalade like a miniature air raid siren. Her reaction was immediate and spectacular. "What the hell? Oh God, what are those?" The GPS tracker showed her car door flying open as the first Hornets emerged from their chamber, disoriented but highly motivated to defend their territory. Brenda tumbled out of her driver's seat, still clutching my stolen package, as more insects poured out in a perfectly controlled swarm. "Help me! Somebody help me!" That beautiful scream echoed down Maplewood Drive as Brenda dropped my package and started running in designer heels like her life depended on it. The Hornets, following their training for crowd dispersal, locked onto her movement and pursued her down the street in formation that would make an air show pilot proud. Frank Rodriguez got it all on video. Sarah Martinez captured multiple smartphone angles. The Johnsons provided live commentary that sounded like they were calling a horse race. "Oh my stars! Look at her go! Those heels are clicking like a tap dancer!" Within 90 seconds, every neighbor within 3 blocks had rushed outside to witness the spectacle. Brenda Kowalski, pillar of the community and self-appointed neighborhood dictator, sprinting down the street at 7:41 a.m. while being chased by a cloud of angry insects. The smell of her vanilla perfume mixed with pure panic as she ran past my front window, arms flailing like a scarecrow in a hurricane. Her perfectly arranged hair came undone. Her pink bathrobe billowed behind her like a cape, and her face displayed the kind of terror usually reserved for horror movies. Detective Santos arrived within 4 minutes, exactly as programmed by the automatic police notification system. She found Brenda cowering behind the Martinez's mailbox, swatting at the remaining Hornets while hyperventilating about assault with dangerous insects and elaborate criminal conspiracy. "Ma'am," Detective Santos said calmly, "we need you to come with us for questioning regarding theft of mail matter, embezzlement, and witness tampering. You have the right to remain silent." Laura Kim's news van pulled up just as Brenda was placed in the patrol car. Live television coverage of an HOA president being detained while covered in hornet stings and surrounded by stolen evidence. It was everything she'd hoped for and more. Formal charges were filed the next morning after a complete evidence review, but the investigation that started with Hornets had already documented years of systematic fraud. But the real climax came that evening at the emergency community meeting. The community center was packed beyond capacity with 127 residents, every single homeowner in Willowbrook Estates. Police officers flanked the entrance. News cameras lined the back wall. The air tasted like collective anger and demand for accountability. Frank Rodriguez presented his complete financial analysis using the room's projector system. $67,000 in systematically stolen funds over 4 years. Fake vendors, phantom services, and fraudulent invoices that had robbed every family in the neighborhood. Then I played the synchronized video footage from that morning's package theft. Multiple camera angles showing Brenda's theft, the GPS activation, Hornet release, and her panicked sprint down the street. The room erupted in gasps, nervous laughter, and scattered applause. When the videos ended, I stood to address my neighbors, the same people who'd watched Brenda terrorize our community for years. 3 months ago, I thought this was about stolen packages, I said, looking around the room at faces I'd come to know and respect. But it was never about packages. It was about power, control, and a woman who thought she could steal from all of us because we were too afraid or too busy to fight back. I paused, letting that sink in. Brenda Kowalski called me dangerous and unstable. She tried to destroy my reputation and divide our community with lies and harassment. But here's what she never understood. This neighborhood is stronger than her greed. You built your own trap, Brenda. I just documented it. The standing ovation lasted 3 minutes. Unanimous vote to remove Brenda from all HOA positions and pursue maximum civil damages. Emergency board election scheduled with candidates who'd pledged complete financial transparency, as Detective Santos announced that formal charges would include embezzlement, mail theft, witness tampering, and filing false police reports. She looked back at the packed room of residents who'd taken back their neighborhood. This, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, is what accountability looks like, and sometimes it comes with wings. 6 months later, I'm standing in the same community center where Brenda's reign of terror finally ended, watching the second annual Willowbrook Unity Festival unfold around me. The criminal justice system worked exactly as designed. Brenda pleaded guilty to multiple felonies to avoid trial: embezzlement, mail theft, witness tampering, and filing false police reports. 24 months in state prison plus full restitution of $67,000. Her husband Dave got 18 months probation for money laundering and conspiracy. Both were permanently banned from serving on any Arizona HOA board, a restriction that should probably be tattooed on their foreheads as a public service. The civil lawsuit recovered $54,000 through asset seizure, insurance claims, and the forced sale of Brenda's white Escalade. The remaining $13,000 shortfall was covered by a special assessment that residents voted for unanimously, considering it a small price for permanent accountability. Our community transformed completely. Monthly HOA meetings now average 40-plus attendees focused on positive neighborhood improvements instead of avoiding conflict. We implemented quarterly financial reports with independent audits, open bidding for all contractor services, and rotating board leadership that prevents any one person from accumulating too much power. Frank Rodriguez became our volunteer financial oversight coordinator, teaching other residents how to read budgets and spot red flags before they become major problems. Sarah Martinez won election to the reformed HOA board, focusing on family-friendly programming and transparent communication. The elderly Johnsons became our community historians, documenting our transition from dictatorship to democracy as an example for other neighborhoods facing similar problems. But the real transformation was personal. I'd moved to Willowbrook Estates, hoping for quiet anonymity after my divorce. Instead, I found purpose, community, and friendships that will last the rest of my life. My engineering background, which Brenda had tried to weaponize against me, became the foundation for solving our collective problem. Sometimes, the skills that make you different are exactly what your community needs most. The Hornet trap became internet legend, spawning countless memes and inspiring similar accountability efforts across the country. Justice with Wings entered the suburban vocabulary as shorthand for creative problem-solving and standing up to bullies. Laura Kim's investigative series won a state journalism award and led to documentary coverage of HOA corruption nationwide. Our story became a case study in business schools about organizational fraud and whistleblower protection. More importantly, our success influenced Arizona legislation requiring independent audits for large HOA communities and stronger oversight of board financial decisions. The Attorney General established a task force specifically to investigate HOA fraud, using our case as a training model. The recovered funds helped launch 3 community initiatives that continue benefiting residents today. The Willowbrook Integrity Scholarship provides college funding for students pursuing careers in public service, accounting, or engineering, fields requiring ethical decision-making and technical expertise. Our desert conservation project replaced water-intensive common area landscaping with drought-resistant native plants, creating a demonstration site that attracts visitors from across the Southwest. The annual Unity Festival celebrates neighborhood resilience while showcasing local businesses and community organizations. Standing here watching children play while adults discuss local issues with mutual respect and genuine collaboration, I'm reminded that the best revenge isn't getting even. It's making sure the problem never happens again. We didn't just catch a thief or expose a fraudster. We built a community that can't be stolen from, intimidated, or divided by people who mistake authority for power. The taste of justice turned out to be sweeter when shared with neighbors who'd become friends, and problems that seemed impossible alone became opportunities for collective action. Sometimes karma does come slowly, but when it arrives with precision engineering and community support, it's worth the wait. If you're dealing with HOA nightmares, neighborhood bullies, or any abuse of power in your community, remember this: documentation beats confrontation, neighbors beat dictators, and sometimes the most satisfying justice is the kind that brings people together instead of tearing them apart. Drop your worst HOA horror story in the comments below. Let's build a movement for accountability, one neighborhood at a time. And if you enjoyed watching Brenda get her comeuppance, hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Next week, my property manager was embezzling rent money until I exposed his fake maintenance scam. Trust me, you won't want to miss how deep that rabbit hole goes. Sometimes the best trap isn't one you set for someone else. It's the one they build for themselves with their own greed and lies. I just provided the documentation. Justice provided the wings.
Thanks for hanging out with us on HOA Stories, where the HOA Karens meet their match. If this story had you cheering or cringing, go ahead and like the video, drop a comment with your reaction, and hit subscribe so you're ready for the next wild HOA tale.